Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. We've got some rather interesting insight into Call of Duty today, as a former Call of Duty dev, a very important one at that, has recently come out on Twitter, posted a few replies, kind of calling out Call of Duty, exposing Call of Duty a little bit for their recent, I guess, direction. Not super recent, but in the grand scheme of things, recent direction with how they've taken Call of Duty and just the franchise in general. And it's not like this is groundbreaking, never before heard stuff, but it's coming from a, a person and in a place that we typically just don't get this kind of response from, if you will. Usually it's us coming to the conclusion of, oh, they're doing this because X, or they're doing this because of Y, right? It's not necessarily someone as informed and as in tune as a former dev that also recently just led up a direct competition to Call of Duty, saying this so publicly. So wanted to break this down, kind of talk about what is being said here. So someone on Twitter ended up tweeting at XDefiant and Pixels of Mark, aka Mark Rubin, who is actually the executive producer on XDefiant. Of course, XDefiant unfortunately shutting down here relatively soon, which sucks in general. As a quick side note, anytime there's less competition in the genre, that's worse for us as players. COD or Battlefield or whoever has to work less to perfect things if there's less competition. There's not necessarily that direct competition breeding better and better and better updates in games for us, which is always disappointing. But Mark Rubin, current executive producer on XDefiant, previously was a studio lead at like Infinity Ward for a long time, right, dating back to the golden days of Call of Duty, and basically was tweeted at saying, hey, just played another round of XDefiant, was a ton of fun, thanks for making this not like Call of Duty. And to this, Mark gives us a pretty lengthy response. He says, thank you, a lot of games, Call of Duty included, just focus on how to make the most money possible out of the player base. Now this, as I said in that intro, that's not groundbreaking news by any means. You and I both know it's plain as day. COD is a business first. Before they are a video game or a fan service or anything else, they are a business. They want to make the most money possible. That's why we have more and more bundles dropping than anything else in the game. You know, terribly broken gun or super huge bug going on in game might take a few days to get nerfed or a few days to get fixed, but every day there's going to be a new store bundle dropping, right? And that's not to say making a bundle is the same as fixing a bug or, doing this or doing that, because that's not. That stuff is planned out way ahead of time. It's not the same people working on the bundles as it is the people fixing things or QA testing or buffing and nerfing stuff, right? But clearly it's like, how can we make the most money here? That's why we see a new Call of Duty every single year, even when it's not needed. That's why we see all this being pumped for Black Cell and for the new paid events and everything. It's money, microtransactions, revenue, profits, as much as that of that as we can get, no matter what. That is the ultimate goal that overshadows everything else, over quality, over everything else, right? It is money, money, money. Business first. Not groundbreaking news and not a hot take by any means. They rely heavily on Fomo, on fear of missing out marketing, and EOMM matches, engagement optimized matchmaking, trying to keep you on the game for longer and longer. Skill-based matchmaking, whatever you want to refer to it as. But I feel like it used to be more about the quality of the game, which would drive players to play. And this is him taking it from his own personal experience, making these games back in the day. Modern Warfare 2, considered the GOAT Call of Duty, up there with the best of the best. That was a game that didn't have skill-based matchmaking or crazy DLC and bundles. You had the packages that came out with a couple of maps. I think it was twice that year during MW2. And that was it. It wasn't like COD is nowadays. Obviously, that was a different era of gaming. But still, that game is one of the greatest games of all time in the eyes of so many video game players. One of the most successful games of all time. There's still people playing it to this day relatively actively, right, on certain platforms. And I mean, if it were to come back with Game Pass or if they were to remaster it, it would probably be the most played option if they didn't go all in on the, oh, also we're going to add bundles and skill-based and this and that and everything else, right? But it's taking from the experience of, yeah, games back then in that golden era of COD were largely just focused on the game being quality, and now you have it where there have been situations over the past few years since, MW 2019 with the games that have dropped where it's like, yeah, you guys are definitely rushing out a COD this year. Like, you could definitely not drop a game this year and probably be just fine and focus more on quality, and they don't do that, and you have games like Vanguard that launch insanely buggy. Surprisingly enough, Modern Warfare 3 only having like 16-18 months of dev time, launches decently smooth, and then has the best post-launch year, but still a title that was given basically no time to be made in comparison to Black Ops 6, a 4-year dev title, the other studios having 3 years. And so you absolutely feel the, oh, this was a meeting a deadline type of scenario, right? And there was no budging there. So interesting POV that Mark has here, saying, feel like it used to be more about the quality, which would drive players to play. And that means making the game more player-centric, i.e., less engagement-based tactics, trying to keep you on for longer and longer, focusing on weapons having 30, 40, 50 levels that take you forever to level up, or you have to get, this weapon unlocked in order to then unlock this weapon or get an attachment for that gun. Of course, that's all factoring in because with skill-based, you have to kind of play into the meta, so they are well aware of that. That's going to keep you on the game longer. You have all these consistent buffs and nerfs. So it's like, okay, 3 weeks later, gotta level up a brand new gun if I want to stay competitive and stay in the meta, or, there's a new skin in the store that is slightly better for the iron sights, or it's more convenient for the visual recoil. All these things that we've talked about dozens and dozens of times, but less engagement-based tactics and higher quality experiences for the players. Better maps, modes, etc. That's kind of subjective. I mean, obviously a lot of people didn't really like the Black Ops 6 maps. A lot of people really liked the Modern Warfare 3 maps. So you were kind of hit or miss with MW2. Like, that's something that is entirely subjective. A certain amount of players might love certain maps, but then those same players hate the other ones, but then a completely different player base is the complete opposite there, right? Modes for COD, you can get sort of creative year to year. Like, we've seen some cool innovations in LTMs over time, but really TDM, kill confirm, dom, search and destroy, those are your mainstays, and that's kind of Call of Duty's, meat and potatoes, if you will. In other words, your game should have a higher player count because it's good and people want to play it, rather than people playing it because the game has a $250 million marketing budget. Everything is just said is very simplified, as it would take too long to really get into it. So this is just him from a very basic view explaining his thoughts on this. Be more like Larian, less like Activision. Larian did Baldur's Gate, I want to say, but be less like Activision is certainly a statement. He does follow up with a few other tweets here. We'll come back to this top one, but then Mark does say, and I just want to add, there are some great people at Activision in their studios. I just think they evolved into something they weren't and haven't been able to escape. So they kind of went all in on this, hey, microtransactions, money first, constant, pushing of that, as opposed to just core gameplay. And now they're so dug into that they can't really reverse course, at least easily, without potentially major hiccups or major interruption there. So they've dug that hole maybe a little bit too deep, and that's just where they're forced to go all in right now. Again, kind of an interesting perspective from someone who has worked directly on this franchise at its peak, and then obviously is now in charge of a direct competition for the game as well. But Mark does also get called out here a little bit himself. Fomo marketing, XDefiant had plenty of fear of missing out marketing, and to this, Mark responds, as a free-to-play game, we did have some FOMO content, although one of the features that was coming was a way to earn a currency by playing to buy old content. But as far as marketing, we barely had any marketing budget, which is unfortunate because, again, I think XDefiant's a really good game, and I'm really bummed that it is shutting down. But interesting that he does say that they were going to build in a currency so that you could actually retroactively get old stuff that you maybe missed out on simply by playing the game more. Call of Duty has sort of leaned into this a little bit more as of late, like with the armory, for instance. Before it was, oh, if you didn't get a gun, well, you just got to buy the blueprint. Now it's like, okay, if you missed out on a battle pass gun or you missed out on an event gun, well, then you can go through the armory and still unlock it there, even if you are coming, weeks, months after that thing was first initially available. But there's also situations where there are things that are only live for 1 to 2 weeks. You have to complete certain challenges. You have to hit a certain threshold and amount of playtime or certain XP to unlock a mastery reward of some kind. So there definitely is that, hey, you got to jump on right now because this is only going on for a very, very limited time. So an interesting POV yet again. I do think this is a cool insight. Well, like I said at the start, this isn't like some groundbreaking, never heard before thing. We as a community have all implied that, yes, this is what's going on. Having an experienced person like Mark also call this out directly and very publicly is, I think the best way to put it, quite interesting in my opinion. But that said, that is going to wrap things up. If you guys enjoyed this video, a like rating is always really appreciated. And if you are new to the channel, you want to guarantee that every single day you're in the know for all things going on in COD, feel free to hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.